The Premier League action is coming our way thick and fast. Remember, it's only been 2 days since Game Week 4 has come to an end, and yet here we are already looking forward to the start of Game Week 5. And believe you me, there's some very interesting matchups set to take place in a week that could still see many teams change the way that their squads look. Hello everyone and welcome back to Sports Today. My name is Shane Dias and today we are going to look at the major burning questions going into Game Week 5, which of course is also going to be impacted by a few transfers that will be taking place or have already been taking place. So let's quickly look at the major questions. First one is, of course, can Manchester United continue their revival of sorts against Leicester City? Now again, Leicester and Manchester United is a battle between two sides who have had quite contrasting starts to the season. Again, Leicester haven't really been looking anything like the side that challenged for those European spots for 2 straight seasons so far this year. Whereas Manchester United, despite starting off with 2 straight losses, have now in fact gotten wins on the board. So in that sense, very impressive revival for Manchester United in terms of, the kind of form they've been showing. Can they continue it against Leicester? In fact, seems very likely because again, Leicester City haven't refreshed their squad at all, whereas United suddenly look a lot more promising. They look like they're playing, at least winning football, if not exactly Eric Ten Hag style football, but they're able to get the results, and that will be important against a Leicester side who at this point are very much there for the taking. Remember, previously Leicester have on occasion troubled United, especially since their, coaching, the way they've been coached and the kind of style of play that they has often exposed United, but that's not necessarily going to be the case. In fact, Leicester winning or even getting a point here would be a massive upset given the kind of form that they've been in recently. What's worse, Leicester are set to lose one of their biggest assets in, of course, Wesley Fofana, who is reportedly on his way to agreeing a move to London rivals Chelsea. He'd been holding out for that move. It's set to happen, but the bright side of that move is that they might just refresh their squad before deadline day. The bad news is that it might not actually happen before this game, so you can expect to see the Foxes eat another loss, whereas the Red Devils are probably favourites to continue their revival. Next major question is, can Arsenal stay unbeaten? Now obviously when you say the words unbeaten or undefeated in Arsenal, it always conjures up memories of course that invincible season in the 2004. Naturally this time around no one's expecting them to actually put in a repeat of that, but Mikel Arteta's men have played 4 matches so far and they've won 4 matches so far. They've not dropped a single point, and up against an Aston Villa side who have really struggled for form except for that one win against Everton. Remember, Aston Villa have lost all their games. They don't look in very good position right now. And you'd say that going to the Emirates at this point in time for Aston Villa, for Steven Gerrard's men, could not have come at a worse time. As I said, they've started the season poorly, whereas Arsenal look like, a team that have been built under the image of coach Mikel Arteta. He's quite clearly, managing to get the team to play exactly how he wants them. They've been very attacking. They've been taking their chances. They've looked like a solid side so far, and I'm expecting that run to continue. Although if Aston Villa can get that upset win, it might just be what their season needs to actually get started, because they haven't looked good at all. But I won't hold your breath. I think Arsenal are definitely favourites in this particular match. Speaking of course, teams would be in and out competing for the top 4. Chelsea ended up putting together a nice win against Leicester City despite being reduced to 10 men. They ended up beating Leicester 2-1, and that was thanks to goals from this man here, Raheem Sterling. He scored his first 2 league goals for Chelsea, and those were enough to actually get the job done. And now of course they'll be travelling to Southampton, but Southampton are a team that can really go either way. Whilst obviously teams have, in recent times put 9 goals past them, and in fact the last time Chelsea played at St Mary's, they ended up scoring 5 goals against the Saints. But the Saints, if their game plan clicks, can be a very dangerous prospect, and Chelsea would in fact be wary of the kind of threat that they pose, especially considering how at times weak or let's say vulnerable Chelsea's defenses looked. That being said, it again would be a major upset if Southampton could get even a point, never mind 3, from this particular encounter, because again, this Chelsea side are going to be boosted by new arrivals, although not probably in time for this game week, but they will in fact be expecting to add to those signings that they've already made, the likes of Kalidou Koulibaly and Raheem Sterling. They're going to be adding to that, and I think they do look like a side that can at least piece together results against the smaller teams. I'm expecting a win for the Blues, and of course hoping for a win for the Blues. You guys know my allegiances. But I do think that Southampton are not a team to be taken lightly. And speaking of teams that you would not be wanting to take lightly, Liverpool up against Newcastle. And the real question is, can Newcastle put a break to the momentum that Liverpool have put in place after that 9-0 win over Bournemouth? Now, obviously, Newcastle of 2022 are a very different proponent or different prospect from the side that they were even 2 or 3 years back. Back then, more often than not, they were flirting with relegation. Now, however, a flush with cash from their takeover. They have money to spend, and in fact, they've recently signed Alexander Isak from Real Sociedad, who at £60 million is actually their club record signing. Whether or not he's ready to play in time for this match, we don't know. But the fact of the matter is, this Newcastle side look the real deal. They look like they can be comfortably challenging for a finish in the top half of the table, and they might just be a tricky prospect for Liverpool to be hosting at Anfield. Nevertheless, Liverpool will feel better having gotten that monkey off their back in terms of getting that first win, and they did it in some style too. So I'm expecting this to be a very exciting game. I don't think it's going to be one-sided. I think whatever happens, both of these teams are going to be giving it their all, and I think it's going to be the finest of margins that decides which of these teams walk away with the 3 points, if at all either of them does. It's a very good chance that you see the points split. Next question, of course, is, can Nottingham Forest, who made an impressive start to this season, actually hope to get anything from their latest match? I'm going to say probably not, because again, Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium, they enjoy dominating. They love putting on a show for their fans. And recently, if you've noticed, they have added another signing in the form of this man, Erling Braut Haaland, who scored a hat-trick against Crystal Palace to give them all 3 points. I don't think, this is the worst time if you're a newly promoted team to be coming up against a team of the caliber of Manchester City. I wouldn't be expecting anything here other than a comprehensive win for City. Anything else is in fact an upset. So even if Nottingham Forest can get a point from this game, I think they should pat themselves in the back, because for me, City are the overwhelming favourites here. Now, of course, moving on, don't forget there's 10 matches this week. Moving on, and let's talk about this London derby, which is pitting two sides who are in very different circumstances right now. The real question is, can West Ham continue their recent upheaval or recent upturn in form? Remember, West Ham had lost their first 3 games, but ended up getting a win thanks to a 1-0 victory against Aston Villa. They ended up getting that victory. It was very very important for them. Otherwise, they'd have been stuck in the relegation zone still, or rather to the bottom of the table. However, for Tottenham, it's been a very good start to the season. They've, besides that draw against Chelsea, they've actually managed to be getting points on a fairly easy basis, and they're currently in the top 4 and looking like a team on the ascendancy under Antonio Conte. Obviously, it's a big match for both of these teams because they are London rivals. But the real question is, are we going to see a one-sided match, or are we going to see a match where Tottenham run out victors comfortably? I'm putting my money on it being a one-sided match because, of course, West Ham will be bolstered by the arrival of new signings as well. They've signed, of course, Lucas Paqueta from Olympique Lyonnais. So whether or not he starts this match or even gets off the bench is irrelevant. Would have boosted the mood and would have boosted the morale, just as their win over Aston Villa did. So this, for me, is the sleeper or underrated match, or what could be the underrated match in this particular game week. It's going to be West Ham versus Tottenham. Of course, Bournemouth ended up putting to rest any speculation as to who would be that team that sacked their manager first, because they sacked their manager Scott Parker after only 4 games in charge. Now, doubtless you'd be thinking that, even though they lost 9-0 to Liverpool and they've not really won any of their games up until this point, it was a harsh call, but the wording of the statement from Bournemouth made it clear that there was some sort of a falling out between Bournemouth's management and, of course, manager Scott Parker, who guided them back to the Premier League. So, just 4 matches in, the Premier League already has its first casualty. The question is, can Bournemouth turn things around in time for a visit against a Wolves side that are always tricky? My answer is going to be probably not, because again, Wolves too have been bolstered by new signings, and under Bruno Lage, they've been that kind of team that can get results, against any kind of opposition. And Bournemouth, to be fair, at this point, don't really present a very, very credible, strong threat. Again, they might just end up surprising you because, when there's a managerial sack, there's always a chance that there's a temporary upturn in results. But given the fact they haven't named the new manager yet and are going to be under the care of a caretaker manager, who is, of course, Scott Parker's assistant, I'm expecting that Wolves will win this one comfortably, and that Bournemouth's struggles in their return season are going to continue. Speaking of struggles, both Leeds United and Everton have made decidedly mixed starts to their season up until this point. Leeds, remember, they had a nice win over Chelsea, but they ended up losing their last game, and Everton haven't really ended up performing to potential, despite the fact that obviously we know for a fact they are having problems with money. They can't spend too much because they're afraid of falling afoul of FFP regulations. So both of these teams really need the 3 points for very different reasons. Again, Everton, you remember, ended up surviving last year in the Premier League by the skin of their teeth. They did not want to be embroiled in a relegation battle this early in the season. For Leeds, they also ended up solidifying their Premier League status on the final day of the season. They'd also were wanting to ensure that it's them who end up getting to the top half of the table and not Everton. So this is going to be a scrappy affair. Of course, we know that Leeds and Everton manager Frank Lampard also have a little bit of history, so expecting it to be a feisty, scrappy encounter. Who gets the 3 points? That's not something I'm predicting, because I think this is going to be a draw, but I think it's going to be a hard-fought draw. We'll see what exactly happens. And of course, last but not least, there is this match between newly promoted Fulham and Brighton and Hove Albion, which can also be an interesting match, because again, Fulham this year under Marco Silva have looked very different prospect than what they did when they previously got promoted in recent seasons. Whereas Brighton, well, they're Brighton. They can absolutely stun any team on any given day, and under the management of Graham Potter have become one of the more consistent mid-table sides in the Premier League. Can Fulham actually get the win here? I would say unlikely, because Brighton, generally speaking, do tend to excel in situations where they're up against teams who aren't necessarily or still somewhat transitional. I think Fulham obviously are still acclimatizing themselves to the Premier League, whereas Brighton have been there for a while, have a generally settled core, and even though they lost the likes of Marc Cucurella and Vis Basuma this summer, they don't look like they've made that much of a loss, because they've made shrewd signings and they've covered their bases. So I think this is also going to be a match that goes Brighton's way. Let's see if I'm proven wrong or not. We don't know for sure. And of course, there is this match also which we have to talk about, is Palace versus Brentford. Now, the big question here is which of these teams can actually try and get some momentum into their campaign. Because again, Palace, they would find themselves very unlucky to have actually not taken at least a point last week. They were leading City 2-0, but ended up losing 3-2 thanks to Haaland's hat-trick. Whereas Brentford, well, again, they started, they beat United 4-0, you'd remember. But obviously, last week, they ended up only getting a draw against Everton. So it's been a bit of a mixed start for Thomas Frank's men. Both of these teams would be desperate for a win to actually kickstart some momentum and ensure that they're not in the bottom half of the table. But only one of these teams can win it, and I'm expecting it to be Brentford, although I think Palace will put up a good fight. But let's see what exactly happens. And that's it for this particular video. Thank you all so much for joining us, and don't forget to shower your love by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and of course tapping the bell icon so that you know when we're going live or uploading a new video for you guys. Don't also forget to drop us a comment, tell us which match you're looking forward to the most. We love hearing from you guys. And also don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're on those platforms. And don't forget to download the SportsTech app for all the breaking news updates from the world of sports, and of course the Premier League too. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, I've been Shane Dias, and I hope to see you all again soon. But bye bye for now.